Skin health, right? All of us want a glowing skin and not have all these issues like eczema, psoriasis, dandruff, hives. I know I had hives, right? A couple of weeks back. I don't know what the heck was happening with allergies, and I would wake up and I'll have my eyes all swollen up and red and my face all puffed up, right? So why does it happen? So we are talking with Jennifer Fugo. She is a clinical nutritionist. So Jennifer will be joining me in 1 second, and she specializes on healthy skin. That is what she specializes in. So hang on for 1 second. Okay, so Jennifer will join us and educate us on the healthy skin, and specifically, there you are, Jennifer. Welcome.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And I was telling our viewers that we all want an amazing skin, and how you specialize in skin and hives. You know, I had a problem. I would wake up and my face would be like all like, blown up in the mornings, and my eyes are kind of coming out. But anyway, for everyone, we are talking about skin health. We are, as Jennifer, she specializes in skin health, and she's a clinical nutritionist. Anything you'd like to add before we go to the questions?
I will say that I had dihydritic eczema, so it's a form of eczema that was on the palms of my hands. Mm-hmm. So this whole topic of having rashes is very near and dear to my heart, and really what I guess I could have just like taken it and tried to just deal with my own health. But to be fair, I just felt like there was so much that still needs to be uncovered and to be discussed in regards to skin health. Mm-hmm. And so that's why I'm sharing everything that I possibly can to help people out there. So thank you for having me.
No, you're doing amazing work. So let's just try to understand. There's so many different skin issues, right? So let's just try to understand the difference between eczema, which you said you had, psoriasis, and what else? Like hives, maybe? We don't want to go medical.
Sure.
This is just an educational session, but just on a high level.
Sure. I would say for people who are listening, eczema, eczema is basically, there's a bunch of different forms of eczema. One I mentioned, dihydritic eczema, that impacts the hands and the feet. You develop like almost these little pustules or bubbles under the skin that go through this flare cycle.
Oh my God.
And there's nummular eczema. There's all different types. It's not considered an autoimmune disease. Okay. There is connections to allergies, asthma. There's obviously that sort of allergic march problem that a lot of people can have. Mm-hmm. And it is something that tends to respond, at least initially, well to like topical steroids. It's sort of where all of us people start. It's like, here's a steroid, try this. Yeah. Whereas psoriasis is a bit different. Psoriasis tends to show up, well, it can impact the full body. I have worked with clients who have a full body. Mm-hmm. It can specifically impact joint areas. It's more scaly. There's usually thicker plaques, especially if you have more of the plaque psoriasis form. And it too is not necessarily considered an autoimmune disease, but it does share some interesting I would say it shares some interesting aspects to it that are similar to autoimmunity. Mm-hmm. And so one issue with psoriasis is there is a pretty big connection between it and like Hashimoto's, as well as non-alcoholic fatty liver disease as well. So you always have to be on the lookout for liver problems. Mm-hmm. And it can also transition to psoriatic arthritis. Some people start with psoriatic arthritis and then end up with psoriasis of the skin. So it you just never know. Chronic hives are basically where you develop these sort of, and I would say urticaria seems to be a better blanket term, of where people can develop hives or welts, or even dermatographia, where if like you were to scrape across your skin, you would just develop welts wherever you scraped. And it could be from just a pen running across your arm to, some people can draw weird patterns on their skin and it'll welt built up. And so some people become so sensitive to hives and such where they could just walk out of the side of their home, and maybe they live in like sunny Florida and it's very hot and humid, and they will burst out in hives. Sometimes pressure from your underwear or your bra line can cause hive formation. And so that can be very, very frustrating as well.
Yeah. So what is the underlying cause? Is there a same underlying cause for all the three that we talked about?
Well, so I personally have figured out, and I wouldn't say that I know everything. We're all still learning. There's a lot of research still out there right now that is ongoing and that is absolutely fascinating. And I think some of it just isn't making it into, and look, I'm not a doctor. I'm not here I'm not here to judge doctors. My dad was a medical doctor and a surgeon, so I have great respect for physicians. But I do think that the way that conventional medicine is structured right now and the standard of care is structured, we're not seeing research really trickle down. It can take 10 years, 15 years. Some of it's just not making it at all, which is very frustrating for the person who's suffering and not getting results.
Yeah.
So some of the root causes that I look at are ones that your audience may already be aware of. So diet triggers, food triggers. Okay. But where I think people oftentimes get sidelined is they think that that's pretty much all there is. So yes, you can have allergies to things or sensitivities to your environment, right? So you could be sensitive to your shampoo or your laundry detergents. There's your chemicals in the lotions and such. But what a lot of people don't realize is that under the surface, there's a lot more going on. So there's liver detoxification challenges, mitochondrial function issues. You can have reactions to medication. There can be hidden infections or dysbiosis. You can have heavy metal toxicity, hormone imbalances, thyroid issues, blood sugar problems. I mean, the list is pretty lengthy. Yeah. And I do want to clarify for somebody who's going, oh, I didn't know that could all be going on. It doesn't mean you have all of those problems. Usually someone has some really interesting, unique, like 3 to 5 different root causes. And it explains then why what worked for Sally might not work for John, even though they have the same exact diagnosis. But it also is really interesting in that a lot of people I've found in this community, if I don't outrightly say this impacts eczema, or this impacts rosacea, or this impacts, as I was saying, urticaria or chronic hives, they think it's not about them. It doesn't fit for them. But the truth of the matter is why it shows up on you as a particular diagnosis, I don't fully have the answer for you for that. I don't know. That's $1 million question. Many of us would love to know. Yeah. But the reality is that I have clients who have rosacea or have psoriasis or eczema that have the same root causes, the exact same cluster, but they have a different presentation in how it wrecks their skin. And why, I don't know. So it is a really fascinating area to help support people around. And I do a lot of interviews with doctors and nutritionists and dietitians and even patients who are going through this on the Healthy Skin Show podcast to help provide people with more insight, because I know there's a lot of, you get tired of your doctor just being like, I don't know, maybe you got bad genes.
I know. That's good. So let's talk about, you are a clinical nutritionist, right? So when the clients come to you, and let's take an example of eczema, right? You said you had eczema.
I did.
Right. So what are the steps? I mean, let's just talk about the framework. What are the steps that people should take?
Well, the first step is really identifying what the root causes are. That's very important. I would say with any skin rash, the first step is saying you need to support your liver, not detoxify your liver, because there's a lot of products out there that, you put liver detox, you'll get, you'll be bombarded with plenty of ads for products and cleanses and powders and all sorts of things. Yes. And while there are some botanicals or herbs that can be wonderful to help support the liver, like milk thistle, they don't work for everyone. And I don't find them to be very supportive, because when I look at it as a clinical nutritionist is, All right, so we have these biochemical pathways. Biochemical, for a regular person, if your eyes are about to glaze over, think of it like a recipe to make like a cake. That's basically what it is. You have ingredients, you have a process, and then you have an outcome, which is the cake. And so in the body, it's sort of the same way. We have the ingredients, which are nutrients. They have to go through a process or down a pathway. We might have certain enzymes, or I like to call them ovens, to do some of the work. And then you end up with a final product. And so in your liver, there is a part of the liver called phase 2 liver detoxification. And what it does is it takes toxins that are either outside exposures, so it could be solvents, paint fumes, pesticides, that kind of stuff. Also, the waste products that are produced within your microbiome. And so when you have, and I have found in 100% of the cases that, I mean, I'm sure that it might be like, maybe it's 99.9 or 99.8, but at least in what I see in my practice, there is usually a microbiome problem. So either there's overgrowth of fungal organisms, there could be SIBO, there could be bacteria or pathogens that shouldn't be there. They produce waste products that your liver has to deal with in this pathway. And when the gut microbiome is overwhelmed and it's stewing essentially in all these waste products, you don't poop those out. They actually cross the barrier, and because they produce benzoates, which you might, those of you who are like, oh, benzoates are a preservative used in food products, like cheaper food products. But they produce a form of benzoate that goes to your liver, and your liver converts it to hippurate so that you can urinate it out. But if you don't have enough glycine, which is an amino acid, and vitamin B6, it's very difficult to make that transformation between the two. So, and it's not something, our body does not make glycine, we don't make B6. So if you have an overwhelming situation that's been going on for a number of years, it's highly likely that that pathway is running real slow, meaning that there's a backup of a lot of, we'll just call it garbage, hanging out, waiting to go down that glycine pathway. And so for me, I'm like, you know what, as a clinical nutritionist, it's crucial that we support the nutritional biochemistry pathways that help our body do what it needs to do. And so my first recommendations are always to add in some glycine and some B6. Usually with glycine, my recommendation is like 3 to 5 grams, 1 to 2 times a day. The powder is a lot easier to take than the number of capsules that you have to take. And then with B6, you should always check with your practitioner. Some like B6 you don't want to over supplement with. So you could safely do like probably 5 to 10 milligrams a day on your own. And then look at your multivitamin, because sometimes it's already in there. You always want to look at all the nutrients that you're consuming and supplements and such to look for that. But that would be my first step. And then from there, you really have to go through the different systems and say, are there nutrient depletions? Are there, mitochondrial dysfunction? With psoriasis specifically, some people actually notice that psoriasis started after they had a strep infection as a child. Strep can actually be a trigger for psoriasis. And it is not uncommon to see high levels of strep still hanging out in your gut, but you don't have strep throat. So at that point, it's crucial to start going through and identifying these root causes. The other thing I will say, because I don't know how, I'm sure your audience is quite educated, and I'm happy to take questions on this as well. But you do want to think about, this didn't happen, for most people, it didn't happen just like yesterday, like the date of onset. Usually there were things happening months before, years before. And so think about, were you breastfed? Were you born vaginally? Were you sick a lot as a child? Were you given a lot of antibiotics? Did you have exposures to pesticides because maybe you grew up in a farming area, and you're exposed to all the pesticides from being sprayed on crops? Go back through all of that. Even if you had a stomach bug, you got food poisoning, you traveled internationally to a country, maybe you didn't get sick, but you did eat food in a country that unfortunately may be like more notorious for parasites and such. All of that matters. And that's a part of your historical case that only you can really gather together, because I'm not a mind reader. So that's why a lot of times people are like, well, it was so long ago. I'm like, it doesn't matter. It's all important.
That's pretty scary. But now, okay, so you talked about the liver detoxification, and I'll tell you, it makes so much sense. And someone also had a question. We'll get to that. So let's just talk about the nutrition. Like, what is the nutrition that we can take to make sure our liver is detoxified on a daily basis?
Well, I would say that some of the key nutrients, sulforaphanes are really helpful. They're found in broccoli sprouts.
Okay.
And I got over my fear of sprouting, everyone. It's really, really easy to do. And for anybody who needs a tutorial, I have one in my highlights on Instagram.
I'm going to do that.
It's so easy. You're going to be like, why did I ever buy these? You'll never go back to store-bought sprouts again. It's so easy.
Okay.
And so broccoli sprouts are great. Collagen can be really helpful because it is a good source of glycine. I will just say this, because I get asked this question a lot. Why can't I just do collagen? So by the time somebody comes and they're searching for the information that I have, usually their skin is so bad. I'm like, at that point, you're beyond what food can do. And the same goes for vitamin B6. The highest source of vitamin B6 when I was looking last night, because I again got this question, was like 1.5 milligrams in maybe salmon or something. And I'm like, yeah, so like the therapeutic doses that I provide my clients after reviewing their blood labs, like you're never going to get there. So there does come a point when you have to make a decision based on the severity of your symptoms. If you're really desperate and you're looking for help, supplements are probably going to be more helpful in that time. So just getting glycine powder, which is really inexpensive, and a vitamin B6. The P5P form is the active form of B6. And both of these are very inexpensive. And then you can start working with someone to determine what your exact combo should be. But I don't have a specific dietary template because I will be honest with you. I work with a lot of people who have eating disorders because they have been through every elimination diet possible. They have done low salicylates, low nickel, low FODMAP, low amine diet. I mean, they have done every sugar-free, dairy-free, gluten-free, egg-free, because some people claim that eggs are a trigger for eczema. And for eczema, sometimes eggs are, sometimes they aren't. I can tolerate duck eggs just fine. I just can't tolerate chicken eggs personally. So everyone's different. What I would say is regardless of where you are, if you're not eating at least more whole foods and more, I would say try to gravitate in that direction. Start with one meal a day. And maybe if you take leftovers for lunch, start with dinner, because that would help with 2 meals. Start cleaning up your diet. Begin eating more leafy greens and things. But again, that's sort of like, if somebody does have a salicylate issue, they may not be able to tolerate greens. See, this is where it gets into the weeds, what to do. So I always tell people, try at least to go gluten-free. Test that out. If you have eczema, you could certainly test out removing chicken eggs. If you don't see any improvement in 2 to 3 weeks of removing chicken eggs, they're not a problem. And so do your best to upgrade the sources of food that you can. Try to reduce your pesticide exposure. So look at the dirty dozen, even especially if money is tight. You don't have to go make everything organic, but some things like berries, for example, might be a good place to start. And do your best to clean up the diet. From there, if you start noticing that you're having like you feel triggered after you eat certain foods, like I was saying about the salicylates. Salicylates are a compound that's found naturally occurring in many really healthy foods. But some people with eczema, for example, will find that it triggers them. And the reason, it's not that you have an intolerance to salicylates. Salicylates are processed down that glycine pathway that we talked about. And so the cool thing is that if you are having a problem with that, the glycine and the B6 will help, because it's just a symptom that nutritionally you're depleted in those areas and actually need more access to those. I did see the question about if I eat steamed broccoli, is it the same as a supplement? And the answer is no, it's not. So broccoli sprouts actually have anywhere from 10 to 100 times more sulforaphanes than broccoli. Broccoli is great if you can tolerate it. Me and broccoli aren't friends, but I can do broccoli sprouts. They're great. And you don't have to cook them either. You just rinse them off and you can put them on your meal or whatever and eat them fresh. And so I think there's a time and a place for sure for food, but there also is a time when you, like, I have one client, he had severe dandruff and eczema almost all over his body. He was extremely exhausted, and his family ate a very, very clean diet. Everything was organic. Everything was made in their home. His wife was a whole food chef, and he was one of the sickest people I knew. And when we did his blood work, he was so new, like, and these are conventional labs. Everything came up low. And he's like, how could this be? I eat so healthy. And the problem was that his GI tract was so messed up from years and years and years. He had a lot of gut function issues. And then his microbiome, he had infections that I had to send him back to the doctor to have addressed. He was on 3 or 4 rounds of antibiotics because it was so bad. And so food is great, but we aren't what we eat. We are what we absorb. And if your digestion is compromised or absorption is compromised, that's great, but you're making very expensive poop, unfortunately.
Oh my God. I love the way you said that.
It's a good way to get people to laugh and lighten up, you know? It's the truth, though. Like, that's what he asked me, and that was my response. I said, unfortunately, you're feeding gut bugs food they probably shouldn't have access to, which is partially what's driven this imbalance forward. And you're pooping out the rest. You're not absorbing it, which is why your body is so depleted right now.
Oh my God. This is like, wow, this is amazing, amazing information, Jennifer. This is really amazing information. And someone also had a comment on that they have a red rash and they think is it because of the liver, which you talked about earlier. So you talked about the liver detoxification. So how would we summarize this? There's so much information. I find it hard to summarize. You know, I need your help to summarize this in 1 or 2 lines.
That's totally fine. So I would say if you have skin rashes, no matter what they are, eczema, psoriasis, rosacea, chronic hives, tinea versicolor, dandruff, start with your liver supporting phase 2 liver detox by adding in glycine powder and some vitamin B6. The reason I saw that, the milk thistle and dandelion, I'll mention that in a moment. The reason is because you need to feed the pathway that's basically your way to get garbage out of your system. Otherwise, it will sit there and it will also get pushed out your skin. Is that the full fix? No, but it's step 1. You can't start dealing with the GI tract because when you start manipulating the gut microbiome, you risk adding to that waste pile. And so I want to get that system, that glycine pathway of phase 2 detox humming along so that by the time we start dealing with what's going on in the microbiome, you're really able to handle it a lot better. And then the second thing would be make sure you are pooping 1 to 3 times a day, because if you're constipated, that waste 1 to 3 times a day. If you're, and they should be healthy formed stools, not little pellets, not loose stools. If you're having a problem with that and you're not sure what to adjust, you definitely want to talk to a practitioner, because it's not normal to be constipated, nor on the other side having diarrhea. As far as milk thistle and dandelion, they are good for the liver. Some people can't tolerate them. They are in the ragweed family. And so for someone who has a big allergic picture, that's a part of their issue. So you know for sure I'm allergic to ragweed. Those two are in the ragweed family. And as is stevia as well. A lot of people don't know that. And so you may have to eliminate those. But milk thistle and dandelion are not going to nutritionally add anything to that glycine pathway. This is specific to nutrients, not to liver detox. And I'm putting that in air quotes for that specific reason. So you can do those, but they're not going to fix deficiencies. They're just not.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much. This is wealth of information for all the people. I know people are asking a lot of questions. If there are any other questions, we can take them. Otherwise, we'll wrap up this session. We would love to have you again. And, more like, I mean, amazing information. And you're doing amazing work. I have to say that.
Oh, thank you. Well, I will say too, I appreciate all the work that you're doing. And if anyone has any more interest in this or questions, I have a great podcast called the Healthy Skin Show podcast. And it has 186 episodes. So we have a ton of content. Yes. So you can go to healthyskinshow.com and you'll be able to search for topics that are specific to you. So you could put in liver detox, you could put in, dandruff, you could put in eczema, and all of the episodes about that and any research that I've cited and everything will come up. It is a wealth of information. And then you can also find there, I have some resources like a skin rash root cause finder, which is this booklet you can go through and check things off and help you figure out what your root causes are.
Sure. We definitely check that out. Thank you so much for doing all this amazing work. With that, we'd like to wrap up this session. Thank you, Jennifer, for your time and your wealth of information. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.